Roman liquid concrete, the self-healing formula. From stones that act like metal to a building material that behaves like a living thing. Stand on a crumbling modern pier and look across the bay at a Roman harbor still shrugging off waves after 2 millennia. The stakes are simple and sharp. If their concrete not only survived seawater but grew stronger because of it, then materials science isn't a straight climb. It's a loop, and we've been relearning what they already practiced. Here's what actually happens inside that ancient mix. Roman builders hauled volcanic ash, pozzolana from the Bay of Naples, mixed it with lime, aggregates, and seawater, and poured it into wooden forms sunk in the surf. Hot mixing mattered. They used quicklime so reactive that it created lime clasts, bright, brittle nodules embedded through the mortar. To a modern eye, those clasts look like mistakes. They aren't. They're release capsules. When microcracks form and salty water seeps in, the clasts shatter, dissolve, and pump reactive calcium into the gaps. New calcium carbonate grows, cracks knit. The structure doesn't just resist the sea, it recruits the sea to repair itself. Meanwhile, at the interface where ash meets seawater, strange minerals precipitate, tobermorite and friends, crystalline reinforcements that thread the matrix. Picture it. Waves hammer, ions migrate, crystals bloom along weaknesses, and the pier hardens with age. That isn't romanticizing ruins. Core samples pulled from ancient breakwaters show exactly those phases, exactly that mechanism. The sea writes a maintenance plan into the concrete's microstructure. Human moments put skin on the chemistry. A foreman on a Roman quay judges the slake by heat on his palm. He orders ash from a particular cove because the color tells him the mix will set fast and hold. A crew tips the formwork into the tide, hears the hiss as seawater bites hot lime, and smiles. They don't say nanoparticulate architecture. They say, this pier will still be here when our grandsons fish from it. Impact spills forward in a straight line you can trace. Modern researchers study those clasts under microscopes, then make new mixes with deliberate hot lime inclusions. They crack the samples, add water, watch them heal, and file patents. Green concrete startups pitch self-healing binders that cut CO2 by extending service life. Civil engineers rework specifications for marine structures, drafting clauses that would have made a Roman builder nod. An ancient recipe becomes a modern climate strategy. So where's the suppression thread? It's messier than a villain. Recipes fragment. Guilds guard ratios as insurance. Emperors subsidize some sources of ash and neglect others. Later polities lose quarries, lose masons, lose the language of the craft. Medieval builders inherit the word pozzolana but not the full choreography, hot mixing, placement in active seawater, patience. The knowledge doesn't vanish behind a curtain. It thins until it tears. There were choices, too. When imperial trade routes snapped, the supply chain for the right ash broke with them. You can't wish tobermorite into existence with the wrong volcanic chemistry. Substitutes worked inland. Harbors failed at sea. In archives, formulas devolved into adjectives, best ash, strong lime, and then into silence. Secrecy, scarcity, and collapse produced the same outcome, forgetfulness. Let's draw hard lines between fact and myth. There's no evidence of magical additives or alien binders. The magic is process. Volcanic ash rich in reactive silica and alumina, quicklime hot mix to create clasts, placement in seawater to kick the chemistry. That combination scales from cisterns to amphitheaters to piers. It isn't trivial, it isn't accidental, and it has boundary conditions you can test. Meanwhile, the pattern we keep seeing returns. Craft encodes algorithms without writing them down. A mason's eye stands in for a lab instrument. A crew's rhythm becomes a Curring profile. When the line of masters breaks, the algorithm dies, even if the ruins remain. That's the practical meaning of suppression by neglect. No bonfires, just apprentices who never learn to feel for heat in the mix. Now step back to the stakes we opened with. If a society can embed self-repair into stone, it can embed advantage into everything that touches that stone. Longer-lived ports, safer grain shipments, fewer rebuilds after storms. That durability buys time for libraries, for workshops, for experiments. And when the harbor fails, the knowledge networks behind it fail next. From structures that heal themselves, we move to something flatter and more fragile. Paper maps that shouldn't be as good as they are. Because once you can trust your materials against the sea, you start sailing farther along coasts you've charted with unnerving accuracy. Piri, Reis, and ancient portal and geometry, the map problem. Lathe the Antikythera gears next to a parchment from 1513, and the same question hums. Who taught the hand? An Ottoman admiral, Piri Reis, compiles a world map and gifts it to a sultan. Only a third survives, but the fragment we have bites hard. Rumline wind roses lacing the Atlantic, Iberia and West Africa crisp, Brazil's coastline traced with surprising confidence. Stakes land fast. If coastline accuracy arrives before official discovery narratives say it should, then someone archived better data earlier than we admit. Here's what we can ground. Piri wrote his sources in the margins, 20 charts and Mappy Mundi, Ptolemaic-style maps, Portuguese regional charts, and crucially a chart by Columbus. He wasn't guessing, he was collating. Portland geometry did the heavy lifting, a lattice of compass bearings radiating from compass roses, allowing mariners to stitch legs into coherent coasts using dead reckoning, time, and practiced eyes. These charts weren't wall art, they were pilot memory pressed flat. Action, picture a dockside table in Gallipoli. Piri spreads inherited logs from his pirate mentor uncle, Kemal Reis, next to fresh Portuguese tracings captured at sea. He copies, adjusts, cross-references soundings, notes currents, jots warnings in Ottoman Turkish. The Caribbean on his map looks odd to us, Cuba welded into a landmass that slides toward Asia. That's not supernatural foresight, it's a faithful echo of Columbus's mistakes and the hybrid data of the time. South America's east, by contrast, flows smoother. Portuguese coast huggers had been there long enough to draw it clean. What nobody in that room knew was how the next 500 years would turn one feature into a magnet for fantasy. The supposed Antarctic coast along the bottom edge. We need to separate signal from noise. The better read of that southern smear is Terra Australis, a hypothesized balancing land the era's cosmography liked to draw, or an overextended rendering of unknown southern coasts. There's no solid evidence Piri had an ice-free Antarctica in his files. Keeping our case strong means trimming claims that don't carry. Now the accuracy puzzle isn't just Piri. European portolan charts from the late 13th century onward mapped the Mediterranean with near-modern coastal fidelity. Their trick wasn't latitude-longitude grids, it was geometry and practice. Bearings recorded as rums and distances paced by experience accumulate into tight coastlines when compiled by pilots who have run the routes for decades. Reprojection studies show that some distortions align with magnetic declination of the era, evidence of compass use baked into the math. That's not impossible knowledge. It's hard-won seamanship rendered with a drafting knife. Impact radiates in directions that matter for our thread. Accurate coasts are logistics made visible. Safer ports, faster journeys, tighter empires. They also imply instruments. You don't keep a portolan tradition accurate without reliable compasses, hourglasses, traverses, and stern discipline about log-keeping. The Kairos Cadiz knowledge loop wasn't mystical. It was bureaucratic. Pilots exchanging rudders, archives loaning copies, courts funding chart houses. Lose those networks, and precision sails off with the last pilot who remembers. Suppression here looks like scarcity and state interest. Original source charts go missing in fires, in wars, in simple neglect. Archives close stacks to protect fragile vellum, which means only credentialed eyes get near the data. Nations classify navigational information when it doubles as military advantage. Portuguese secrecy around Atlantic routes wasn't a rumor, it was policy. Later, scholars wave away anomalies as luck or post-contact interpolation without checking the annotations Piri himself left. Call it overconfidence neatness. If the result doesn't fit the linear story, the result must be a mirage. Let's fix the lens. Facts we can defend. The Piri Reis fragment is dated 1513. It draws on a mixed library including a Columbus map. It shows the eastern South American coast surprisingly well for its time. It binds knowledge through portolan geometry and sailor source data. Claims we should drop. Definitive Antarctica, global projections implying modern spheroid models or precision beyond what portolan methods can yield. The truth left standing is already thrilling. A data fusion project on animal skin, orchestrated by a naval officer with access and audacity. Micro-stories make it human. A Portuguese pilot captured after a gale watches an Ottoman scribe trace the harbor he just fled. He winces at a misplaced shoal and corrects it with a fingertip, bargaining for better treatment with a better chart. Months later, a merchant hugs that corrected harbor line and keeps his cargo. Meanwhile, up the chain, Piri pens a note. Here, the current runs strong, steer west of the headland. That marginalia is a life saved. It's also metadata. Here's the pivot that ties back to gears and forward to instruments. Consistent accuracy across traditions implies a hidden machinery behind the parchment. Standard wind names, shared pilot schools, instrument shops turning out compasses with known deviation. If those shops standardized, we should find their fingerprints, uniform rows geometries, recurring error patterns tied to declination, even workshop-specific icon flourishes. Some of that patterning is in plain sight if you look. The rest is in drawers we still can't open. Impact on our core question is clean. If an admiral could synthesize charts across languages and states into a coherent coastline, then the world's edges were being modeled as deliberately as the heavens were. And just like the gearwork, the portal and lattice points to missing siblings, lost source maps, lost pilot logs, lost instruments. Suppression by secrecy, by monopoly, by fire, by indifference, different masks, same outcome. Mapping requires instruments. The instrument exists, we just haven't introduced it yet. A device that keeps memory through motion, no magnet required, sank with a ship and time. The Greek fire delivery system, controlled naval flamethrower. Unknown to the mapmakers, across the straits another technology was shaping coastlines by fear alone. Greek fire wasn't a recipe, it was a system. Stakes are immediate. A state kept weaponized chemistry, delivered under pressure through bronze hardware that could burn on water and erase fleets. If secrecy can preserve an empire, it can also suffocate the knowledge around it. Here's the action. 7th century Constantinople, Arab fleets pressing the Bosporus. A Phoenician-born engineer, Kallinikos in some accounts, arrives with a formula and a method. Not just sticky fire, but a way to project it. Heated mixture, pressure, controlled nozzle. Byzantine ships mount siphons, bronze tubes on swivels fed by pumps below deck. Crews work in teams. Stokers heat the mixture, pumpmen build pressure with piston strokes, nozzlemen aim. When the command is given, a gout of liquid flame arcs and clings. Water won't save you, it spreads the burn. Contemporary chronicles don't provide schematics, but they do give patterns. References to siphons on prows. Mentions of hand siphons, cherisiphons used ashore like early flamethrowers. Reports of grenades, ceramic pots filled with incendiary mixture and sealed, hurled to shatter and mix components on impact. The chemistry is debated, likely a petroleum base like naphtha, thickened with resins, perhaps sulfur and quicklime to enhance ignition and persistence. The delivery mattered as much as the brew. Heat thinned the fuel, pressure turned it from splash to stream. Human choices determined survival. A captain closes to a specific angle where the siphon can sweep an enemy deck. A pump crew counts strokes, eyes on a brazier waiting for the nozzleman's nod. A shipwright reinforces foredecks to carry the weight and recoil of the apparatus. Discipline turns peril into doctrine. Approach, fire, withdraw, fire again. Naval engagements become asymmetric. The psychological effect is its own weapon. Sailors who have seen Greek fire don't rush a Byzantine line twice. This was the moment everything changed for the empire's logistics. A few ships with siphons could break blockades and protect grain convoys. That advantage rippled outward. Stable food supplies, paid garrisons, time to repair walls and commission more siphons. Technology chained to infrastructure, pumps and valves forged by bronze workers, hoses sealed with treated leather, storage barrels built to hold volatile fuel without leaking. Each link was a craft, and each craft spent its ingenuity on secrecy as much as on performance. Suppression here is frank. The mixture's formula and the apparatus were treated as state secrets. Knowledge was compartmentalized, components prepared in separate shops, final assembly aboard ships, mixing centralized like a medieval Coca-Cola technique. Defectors reportedly executed. Manuals, if they existed, didn't circulate. The Byzantines managed the paradox well enough for centuries. Use the weapon publicly, reveal nothing privately. When would-be imitators tried, they managed foul-smelling fires and chaos, not steady streams. The secret held. But secrecy taxes memory. Over generations, guarded knowledge becomes brittle. The empire used Greek fire for roughly 500 years, yet by the end, later writers confess ignorance of details. When the capital fell, the network that made the weapon coherent, fuel chains, pump makers, trained crews collapsed. The formula didn't get stolen, it evaporated with the payroll. That's suppression by success, a secret protected so well it died with its guardians. We should keep speculation inside the rails. There's no surviving pump rig to analyze, no bronze nozzle with maker's marks we can tie to a foundry ledger. Chemical guesses remain hypotheses. What's solid? Weaponized petroleum mixtures existed. Byzantine records describe pressurized projection. Illustrations show prow-mounted tubes. The strategic effects are historical. If we want proof of a pressure system, we can look to consistent accounts of range and control that jars alone can't explain. Micro-stories grounded. A swordsmith's apprentice is redirected to turning bronze for valves, told never to ask about the oil stink. A paymaster lists a bonus for a crew that recovered a siphon from a burning deck, bringing home both hardware and silence. An enemy pilot captured alive is marched below a Byzantine ship's deck and sees nothing but planks. The machinery is hidden behind panels, its heat diffused. He has nothing useful to describe when ransomed back. Impact extends into engineering lineage. To deliver Greek fire, you need robust pumps, double-acting pistons, check valves that seat reliably under heat, fittings that don't leak under vibration. That hardware doesn't disappear when the flames go dark. It's seating improvements in firefighting pumps, fountain hydraulics, siege engines. Pressure metered becomes a habit. Meaning lands with our theme's teeth. Greek fire demonstrates that a civilization can keep lethal tech compartmentalized for centuries, using it sparingly yet decisively. It also shows the cost. When the institution that remembers collapses, the knowledge collapses with it. Protection and control become the same mask from the deck of a burning ship. Some secrets are burned, others will be buried under ash. Roman dodecahedra, range finders or rituals. While the flames curled off enemy decks, quiet bronze puzzled farmers and soldiers on land. Small, hollow, 12-faced objects, Roman dodecahedra, turn up from Britain to Hungary. Each face has a circular hole, each hole a different diameter, rims edged with little knobs. No text explains them. Stakes are sharp. If these weren't trinkets, they were instruments, devices that turn sightlines into numbers. Action first. Archaeologists have cataloged over 100, mostly from 2nd, 3rd century contexts. Sizes vary palmable to grapefruit. The geometry repeats, pentagonal faces, paired apertures aligned across the body. Some show wear around specific holes. A few come from military sites. None carry inscriptions beyond the metal's own patina. The absence of labels feels like a dare. So people tested what the geometry suggests. Hold a dodecahedron at a fixed distance from your eye, arm extended, and look through one hole toward the opposite hole. Because the pair's diameters differ, only a narrow cone of view aligns. If you know the size of a standard target, say a legionary standards disc, a tent width, a vine stake, you can step the object in and out until the target just fits the inner circle. That snap fit gives you a triangle. Triangle gives you range. Range gives you placement. How far to walk, how far to shoot, how much rope to unravel. Engineers built replicas and went to fields. With a bit of calibration, marking an arm length, noting which hole pair matches which standard, they got consistent distance estimates across tens of meters. In textile markets, a different hack. Pass a thread through two opposite holes and tension it to gauge standard diameters for knitting sleeves and socks. In agriculture, a line vine rows season to season. In training grounds, teach recruits to judge range without shouting numbers. The object's beauty isn't decoration. It's grip and orientation. The knobs keep fingers off the sightline and let you rotate to the calibrated pair. Impact ripples. If these are rangefinders, they imply a practice. Standardized targets, shared rules of thumb, unit drills where the same arm length is taught, quartermasters issuing a common tool. That's logistics disguised as geometry. If they're textile gauges, that implies trade regularity, loom widths, pattern transmission, a mobile, pocketable standard. Either way, they're portable metrology. Suppression here looks like a shrug. For decades, catalogs called them ritual by default, our discipline's catch-all for we don't know. That label blocks funding for functional tests. Museums lock them in cases without replicas people can handle. The ritual tag comforts us. It also freezes curiosity. Meanwhile, YouTube fills the gap with everything from candle holders to alien communicators. When institutions won't run trials, the internet will, badly or brilliantly. Let's keep speculation fenced. We don't have a Roman manual saying, use hole pair B, G to measure 100 feet. We also don't have soot in every example to prove universal candle use, nor residue patterns that shout textile only. What we do have are geometry, where patterns, and experiments that show range estimation and gauge functions are plausible. Multiple uses can coexist. A Swiss Army tool doesn't need a single purpose to be real. Human stories give it texture. In a muddy field, a centurion hands a recruit a dodecahedron and points to a ridge. The recruit lines a standard in the inner circle, calls a distance, and the unit practices an approach march to that mark. In a Gallic workshop, a woman feeds wool through two opposite holes, checks tension, nods, and repeats across a stack of sleeves destined for a fort. In a vineyard, an old man squints through brass at last year's trellis and smiles, because this year's posts will land true. What nobody at the time could see was how the label ritual would age. It makes the object safe. unthreatening to narratives that keep tools in straight boxes. But the pattern we're tracing doesn't care about our labels. Precise geometry keeps returning because societies need it. Sometimes it's in stone, sometimes in bronze. Sometimes it's a grand orrery, sometimes it's a fist-sized polyhedron that turns a field into a diagram. Meaning snaps into our thread. Whether the dodecahedron ranged targets, sized sleeves, or both, it reveals a habit, solving real problems with compact, elegant instruments that fit a hand. That habit connects workshops across provinces and decades, and it hides easily in plain sight, misnamed, untested, unthreatening. The next leap follows that habit inward to tools that reshape perception itself. Up close through glass, the ancient world gets sharper. Ancient lenses, Nimrud lens, and optical craft. From the fist-sized bronze to a thumb-sized piece of quartz, the problem doesn't change. Who taught the hand? The Nimrud lens sits there, oval, slightly convex, scratched by time, pulled from an Assyrian palace room in the 19th century and filed as curiosity. Hold it over a fine engraving and the lines jump. Not magic, magnification. Here are the stakes. Optics compress and expand skill. If artisans had reliable magnifiers, they could chase finer detail in metal, stone, and script. Astronomers could calibrate star positions more cleanly. Physicians could see splinters, inspect wounds, tease fibers. Lenses don't announce revolutions, they sneak them into fingertips. Action starts in a royal city on the Tigris. In a storeroom, archaeologists unpack ivories, beads, and a piece of rock crystal shaped purposefully, ground to a slight convexity. It isn't a perfect lens. It has aberrations, its focal length is short, its polish uneven. But set it at the right distance and a scratch becomes a groove you can follow with a needle. Elsewhere in the ancient world, glassworkers in Greece and Rome blow and grind small globes and plano-convex buttons that distort and enlarge. Writers mention burning glasses, focusing sunlight to kindle flame. A burning glass is a magnifier that's taken a side job. Meanwhile, artisans behave like experimental physicists with no jargon. A gem cutter rubs quartz against a shaped lead lap with abrasive, checks a cabochon against light, regrinds. A glassworker floats a drop of molten glass on a metal plate, lets surface tension pull it into a dome, snips the stem, and finds it makes tiny letters easier to read. A scribe sets a clear bead over a cramped margin to copy a difficult line. No treatise required. 1,000 tiny corrections live in hands. Impact reaches farther than the workshop table. A magnifier lets you cut dies for coins with finer relief, which increases anti-counterfeit detail. It lets you etch finer graduation marks on measuring rods and sundials, improving metrology. It lets navigators and astronomers sight to thinner marks on instruments like astrolabes and quadrants, tightening angle readings. Stack small gains and the chart grows truer, the calendar less slippery, the temple alignment closer to intended azimuth. Optics is a ratchet. The suppression mask here is dismissal. The Nimrud lens gets called a decorative inlay, a toy, an amulet. Ancient glass lenses are displayed as jewels, not tools. Histories of optics often start late because that's where the big names and polished theories sit. Ulhazen's great texts, medieval spectacle guilds, Renaissance workshops. But absence of writing isn't absence of use. A lens that lives in a toolkit doesn't need a scroll. It needs to work without discussion. Let's keep speculation fenced. The Nimrud lens wasn't a precision telescope objective, and there's no evidence of ancient microscopes. Its optical quality limits resolution, spherical aberration smears detail. Yet at a few centimeters it helps. Other archaeological lenses, rock, crystal, glass, show similar good enough behavior. That's the interesting phrase, good enough to change what a careful hand can do. Human moments make it concrete. A goldsmith squints, then sets a clear pebble in a bit of wax on his ring finger and leans into filigree that would otherwise blur. A seal cutter checks the negative carving of a lion's mane under a bead and feels when the curve catches light properly. A temple steward holds a glass button over a ledger and smiles because yesterday's numbers finally separate. What nobody at the time could see was the straight road those little domes were paving. Later scholars in the Islamic Golden Age would write the physics, codify reflection and refraction, and build instruments on purpose. Medieval Italian shops would balance two lenses on a nose and sell time back to aging eyes. Renaissance makers would stack lenses into spyglasses that pulled ships closer and telescopes that expanded the sky. But the seed is older, the idea that a shaped, clear thing can extend sight. Impact then isn't a single revelation, it's a culture of looking closer. And once you can look closer, you start finding patterns you didn't know were there. Tool marks, star twinkles, hairline cracks, the faint thread of a canal. You start hearing the world differently too, because careful eyes train careful ears. We're about to walk out onto a high desert where drawings only make sense when seen from above, but their logic lives at ground level, in sound, water, and steps. From seeing distant stars to hearing distant storms, the same habit guides the hand. Nazca sound lines and geoglyph engineering. Out on the pampa, the air thins and the ground turns to a canvas of stones. Lines run straight for miles. Trapezoids open like runways. Hummingbirds, monkeys, a heron with a beak you could walk along, drawn by removing the dark, oxidized stones to reveal pale soil beneath. From the sky, it's a gallery. On foot, it's something else, a tuned landscape.